Thank you so much, Susu. And thank you all for being here today. I'm really grateful to see such a big group. And I wanted to start just by sharing a little bit of my personal story. I am an executive coach. I specialize in women's leadership. So I like to help women become more confident, more visible, and more influential leaders. And before I became a coach and consultant, over 10 years now, I spent the first half of my career in the high tech industry. And I kind of stumbled into high tech. It wasn't really my master plan. I didn't anticipate ever going into the corporate world, to be honest. But I kind of consider those times the best of times and the worst of times. I worked for an organization that was a market leader. There was a lot of great energy. We had a really fun, exciting team, but we also had some challenges. And I remember thinking at the time that I joined, I was very young and I would say naive, that there were no challenges being a woman in that space. I remember thinking I wasn't treated any differently for my gender. What was everybody talking about? Until the moment it happened. And then I could no longer unsee it. And because I wasn't prepared for it, because I had told myself that it didn't exist, I found it to be even more painful. And I'm sure that everybody on this call has had some type of experience in their work life that you felt different because of who you are. And so I want to comment on why we are, certainly Women Accelerators as an organization exists to empower women, but why we think it's important to have a development program that's specifically focused on women. There's a lot of controversy these days, and you may have seen some of that in some of the articles that have been floating around social media, suggesting that leadership programs that are oriented towards women tend to make women a problem that need to be fixed, as opposed to acknowledging the system failures or the system challenges that hold women back or that undermine our ability to effectively advance within our workplaces. And my philosophy on that is absolutely there are systemic issues that are causing this problem, that it's not women who need to be fixed. However, we cannot control the system. And given some of the slow progress that's been made on the diversity, equity, and inclusion front, that we will start to see even more change. I think the pandemic has brought to the surface a lot of issues that had been previously ignored or maybe not fully recognized. And I'm hoping that that will accelerate the pace of change. But in the meantime, the only option we really have is to empower ourselves by recognizing what some of those challenges are and deciding what's within our control. And so if we understand the landscape, if we understand the challenges that we're likely to encounter, and we have a plan for how to show up in relationship to those, then we can be stronger and navigate our own workplaces with greater confidence. So that's the philosophy that I bring to this program. I want to take a moment and share a slide with you. Bear with me. This slide really illustrates the key focus areas that we emphasize within the program. So we're a 12-week program. When we did it last time, we actually did it every other week. So it was a 6-month program. What we've decided to do is to collapse that now into a weekly program. So it'll be 3 months. And we have a couple of orientation style sessions in the beginning. So the first one is really a get to know everybody else in the space. It's important that you all feel a sense of trust and safety with one another, to be able to share vulnerably, to ask questions, to feel like you can be your full self in those settings. So we like to make sure that you have plenty of time to get to know each other. We also do an initial assessment up front that is a self-assessment. You essentially share your own baseline across each of these dimensions. And there's some questions associated with each to give you a sense of how do you feel about how you're doing across each of these today. And then from there, we encourage you to choose a couple to really focus on over the course of the program. My hope and my goal is that you will achieve value from every session and that you will feel an overall sense of value from the program. But I also know that it can be difficult and daunting to try to achieve goals in each one of these categories. So this sort of allows you to focus a little bit more on the areas that you see as having the highest value, or maybe the greatest sense of urgency based on your own experience right now. So then we'll dive into each of these, starting in our third session, and it begins with confidence. And for me, confidence is foundational to everything else that we do within the program, because you can know all the strategies, you can have all the clarity in the world, but if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't believe that you deserve to be in every room that you enter, then you're not going to take advantage of the tools that we share in the program. We then move to career goals, which is an opportunity to think a little bit more deeply about who you are and what you want from your career. We tend to find ourselves, and this is not in any way a criticism, this has certainly been my experience as well, on autopilot, because life is moving so quickly. We have so many different things going on at once. We're trying to serve so many different people. We're trying to juggle so many different responsibilities that we don't necessarily take the time to think more deeply, more reflectively about whether we're on the path that we want to be on, whether we're fully leveraging our strengths, whether, we know what it is that we want to do next. So this creates space for you to have that conversation as a group, as well as on your own, to reflect a little bit more deeply so that you have a little greater sense as to where you want to go next when you leave this program. We then move into strategic relationships, which, I think women in general, and this is of course a stereotype, I think we all have different experiences with this, but across the board, some of my observations have been that women are really great at work friendships. We're really great at building strong relationships with our teams, with our managers, with the people that surround us, but we're not necessarily as comfortable or as clear on how to build some of the more strategic types of relationships with potential sponsors, with people in influential roles across the organization. And that's partly structural as well. We may not feel like we have those access points that are available more naturally to men. We don't necessarily know how to do it, or sometimes it puts us in situations where we have to build relationships with people that frankly we don't like. And so we talk a little bit more about that, how to get past some of those roadblocks and ensure that you're diversifying your network in the most powerful way. We talk about communication as well, and this is an opportunity to recognize that we all bring a different communication style and preference to the workplace. That's something that I think we intellectually understand when we think about it, but it's the first thing that goes out the window when we find ourselves in a conflict or with somebody who's different than we are. We tend to personalize interactions and say, oh, that person doesn't like me, or that person is a jerk. And so we use the Deloitte business chemistry profiles model, which is another variation of the personality assessments that are out there, but it's one that's designed specifically to be observable and to be used in the workplace. So I really like that model a lot. It gives us great language that you can use within your own teams when you leave the program. Influence, as I see, as really the intersection between communication and strategic relationships. So once we've identified some of those strategies for relationship building, we have a clear understanding of our own communication style and the styles of some of the members of our team. How do we take that up a level to ensure that we're more politically savvy within our organizations, that when we speak, we're heard, that we're invited into the conversations where we can have the greatest impact? And oftentimes when I talk to pretty much everyone, I wouldn't even apply a gender lens to this sentiment. Most people don't like politics. They think, oh gosh, I stay out of politics. It's not my thing. And what I always say in response to that is, of course, that's your choice. But if you choose to avoid office politics, you are removing yourself from the influence loop. There's simply no way to have it both ways. So how can you do that in a way that feels more authentic, that doesn't require you to compromise on your values or to compromise your integrity? We move then into visibility, which is really about self-promotion and being recognized for all of the great work that you're doing. Women, traditionally speaking, have been conditioned to be humble, to avoid talking about ourselves, to receive backlash at times when we do. And so we don't often know how to go about promoting ourselves, even if we recognize that there's value to doing so. We often have a caricature in our minds of that obnoxious person that's always tooting their own horn, and we're so afraid of being perceived as that person that we avoid self-promotion entirely. And so what I will share with you is that there is a gray area in between that obnoxious character and doing nothing. And if you are afraid of being that person, it's very unlikely that you ever will. Right? It's the people who lack that self-awareness that end up showing up that way. So how do you ensure that all of that great invisible work is being seen and that you're being recognized, compensated, rewarded for all the great work that you're doing? And then we talk about strategic mindset. So how do we shift from being more tactically oriented into being seen as somebody who can get things done through other people? Now, this is also, a stereotypical way of thinking about things, but it's something that I've observed very directly through my coaching of women over the last 10 years, is that a lot of times we get branded as someone who's an excellent doer. We're really reliable. We're very determined to prove our value early on. And so early in our careers, we become recognized as people who get things done, as people who produce very high quality work. And it's great to feel needed. It's great to be recognized for that. But then as we want to advance our careers, or if we want to take on more leadership roles, we have to make a shift away from being more tactically focused and be able to see the bigger picture, to be able to not necessarily be the one who jumps in, rolls up our sleeves and solves the problem, but recognizes what's the root of that problem and what other resources can I leverage in order to address it at a root level. So that is what we'll be talking about in that segment, so that you're really prepared to position yourself as somebody who is more of a visionary, somebody who's a leader at a higher level. And then finally, time management, the challenge that we all face, especially these days where life is moving a million miles an hour. We all have way more on our to-do list than we can ever get done. And so time management we'll look at from the perspective both of the workplace, which is essentially an extension of the strategic mindset module. Well, how do we say no? How do we set boundaries? How do we go back to someone who's asked us to do something, even if they're very powerful, and have a conversation about why that's not possible right now, given limited resources? But I also like to take a holistic lens as well, and really encourage you to think about where you might be missing out on other parts of your life, because we spend so much of our time at work. Burnout levels are through the roof. How can we ensure that we're taking care of ourselves as well? Because as cliche as it sounds, we cannot be the best resource to others if we're not putting our own needs first and making sure that we're, as they say, putting our own oxygen masks on first. So that's what we're going to cover within the program. And then, we do a wrap up where we retake the assessment, see how things have changed, how you're feeling now after you've completed the modules. And then our final session is really focused on getting uncomfortable by sharing your successes. It's a celebration. Bear with me, I'm just gonna mute that. It's an opportunity for you to practice talking about your strengths, the things that you've done well in a safe space. And it's really fun. If you can set aside the discomfort, it's always a really inspirational and exciting part of the program. So that's what it looks like. I want to stop sharing my screen now, and we are very fortunate to have with us this evening 3 former participants who went through the program when we did it last year, and they have graciously offered to share a few words about their experience and just to kind of give you another perspective on what it was like to go through the program. And I'd like to let's start with Rachel, since you were the first one to join us this evening. I'd love to hear any thoughts that you would share with somebody who's thinking about joining this program.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kim and Susu, for having me tonight. I'm really excited to be back in this space. I can't believe it's been, half a year since we've wrapped up. It feels like yesterday. So I'm really happy that we're back again. But what I thought was really great was looking back, I really needed this program when it happened. And so I was really happy to be part of it. What I thought was cool was that even though we're all kind of at different phases of our life personally, and we're in different professional fields, the fact that we all kind of found this common ground because we're relatively new to the workforce, I thought was a great, starting factor. And so for me, I was in school for, most of my life. So like the job I'm in now was the first quote unquote real job out of school. So that was definitely something to adjust to. And for me, the first 2.5 years, I was sort of on autopilot, like just, get the metrics done. There was no strategy behind the job. It was just a job. But then this program sort of allowed me to have that safe space to reflect and figure out, well, what do I want to get out of this? I'm not just, creating an output for my boss, but what am I getting out of this? So it started to push me to get a little bit more creative. And then actually starting in July, I actually got promoted. Like they noticed a big change in how I was, acting over the last, year or so. So that really helped me find the confidence within my job to really push myself out of my comfort zone and start producing different content or things that I might think might be beneficial, but didn't know if they thought was beneficial. And then they actually realized it was beneficial. So it was all these different things that I was almost too scared to try before, but realized that it was time to start pushing myself more. And there was I think it might have been in the communication section. Was it Kim, I love the wheel of personalities. You remember where it's like, are you like a pioneer or all these different things? And it made me realize how I communicate versus my coworker communicates in a totally different way. And it made me figure out how best to communicate with them and, vice versa. So it was definitely a great session. That was one of my favorites. I really appreciated all the different self-assessments that we had to take to really help with the reflection. And the other, term that I'll echo that Kim said is the fact that this was a safe space. It was a sounding board for all of us. I think, the fact that we've been so virtual that we haven't had the opportunity to network or just connect with people. And this was a really great opportunity to get to know people over the span of 6 months. So it was really great to, kind of expand my LinkedIn network too. So got to see what everyone's up to lately. And so it's been really, really great. So I hope you guys get as much out of it as I did, because it was really a great program.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and congratulations. That's very exciting news. And
Thank you.
And yeah, I think that's a very that's a theme that I hear a lot from people who've gone through this program is they do get promoted, they get more responsibility, they make more money because they learn so much about themselves and recognize, oh my goodness, that I am doing so many amazing things. And you have all the raw material, right? Is what this gives you
right.
The frameworks and the strategies for how to put that together more effectively. So you can now talk about yourself more confidently. So thank you so much, Rachel. Crystal, would you like to go next?
Good evening, everyone. It's really an honor to be here. And Rachel and Jennifer, it's so great to see you. Like you said, Rachel, it's really nice to be back together. And I'll echo a lot of what you said. This was just a really safe space to look forward to every other Monday at noon, to sit down with a group of women who are at all various parts of their life. I'm very different. I'm 39, I'm a mom, and I'm 4 years into working at a startup company. And if anybody's worked in startup life, it's very, very different. I have one coworker and me. I'm running a lab and she's running the business end. And she really encouraged me to do this because she's been my mentor for a very long time. And she saw that my confidence was lacking and she knew I could do everything, and I did everything, but I didn't know I was doing everything. So this was a really wonderful experience for me to learn all the 12, go through the 12 weeks and kind of find myself and realize that I had all those tools already, but it was a good way for me to learn how to use those tools. So I got confidence out of this. My boss actually absolutely saw it. She's like, you're different. I've been given more responsibility. And while we're fundraising right now, I'm kind of doing a little bit of, I get to wear all sorts of hats, but I'm doing all sorts of new things. But what's really exciting is that if our fundraising goes through, I'll be able to have some UMass interns working with me in the lab, and I'll really get to put all these skills to use. So this is a program for anybody, whether you're still in school, coming right out of school, if you're in a different role in your company. I think you can really utilize this program in so many ways. And that's what I found so useful and helpful to hear from all the different people in it, whether you're in life science or finances or wherever. We had such an eclectic group of women, and I really loved learning from all of them.
Thank you so much, Crystal. And you're right. I do think that it's designed to be something that's valuable to people at various stages with different backgrounds, and the opportunity to connect with people who have different perspectives or in different parts of the journey can be really illuminating in many ways. So thank you for saying that too. Jennifer, how about you?
Hi, my name's Jennifer. I lead a research team at a startup called For Surety. And I came there from several years of graduate school where I was kind of a very solid individual contributor. And then after about a year of doing that kind of work at my new company, I was promoted to start managing people. And when I did the program, I was also trying to get more strategic and think more about like road mapping and things like that. And what this program really made me realize was that individual contributor was kind of my comfort zone, and that's where I would kind of go back to, and that there were tactical steps I could take to think more strategically and start to make those connections. What I had thought before was like, I'm not strategic because it's not something I'm good at, like I'm never going to be good at this. So what I didn't realize was that there are steps I could take to think more strategically, and the fact that it was uncomfortable just because it was somewhere where I was pushing myself, and that was actually a good thing. And I think, like everyone else has said, one of the great parts of the program is that it is a safe space to talk to other women. It makes you feel like you're not alone when you find other people have had similar struggles, because it can feel like you're the only person in the world who's ever felt like that, and that is definitely not the case. And then the other thing I really liked was that everything we learned was so easily applicable. It wasn't like reading a book where you read a case study and you're like, oh, that's great that that woman did X, Y, Z. This was like, you know, you learned something that you could apply to your day-to-day job the next day, regardless of what your position was or what kind of field you worked in. And I really appreciated that. I was able to put things to work right away. And my boss definitely recognized that I was, you know, being more strategic and thinking more high level, which is something I'd been wanting to work on. So all that was really helpful.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate your perspective on that. And I love how you call out the actionability, because that's really one of my personal goals, is to ensure that everybody leaves feeling like there are very clear, doable steps that you can take. I'm very cognizant of the fact that new things are scary. Stepping out of our comfort zones is not necessarily our favorite thing to do. And so, you know, to share strategies that may stretch you a little bit, but aren't entirely unrealistic, that don't feel like they're not within your reach. So thanks again. Thank you all. It was such a pleasure to have you in the group. It's so nice to see your faces again after all this time, and so nice to stay connected too. You know, I think, like maybe Rachel, you had said about having a bigger network. It's just nice to stay in touch with everybody and see how everybody's going, you know, advancing their own careers since the program. We want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. I want to make a couple more comments just about the logistics that I've been thinking about as we've been talking. Susie mentioned that we'll be meeting Mondays at noon. Every session is recorded. It is only shared with the members of the group. And that is really because we understand that schedules are very unpredictable. The middle of the workday can be difficult sometimes. And so we want to make sure that you have access to all of the sessions, whether you're available to attend live or not. There is a companion workbook, excuse me. So there is a resource that we put together that has a lot of self-reflection questions within each module. And it's also a place if you'd like to take notes or just keep it as a reference, if you want to refer back to it over time when, you know, you're in a new situation, maybe hadn't thought about something when you were at this particular point in the program. And then also, like I said, if you want to refer back to any of the recordings over time, you're welcome to do that as well. So we'll share those on OneDrive with you. I think that's all for now. Anybody have any questions? You're welcome to either come off of mute or share in the chat.
I have a question.
Oh, hi, Sparky.
Hello. So the actionable goals that you're talking about, is that something that we would expect after each session? Is that a certain point through the training? Or are there homework things throughout the training? So What does the outside of the 12 to 1 p.m. look like being a participant of this program?
Well, that's a very good question. So the self-assessment that we complete at the start really outlines the goals. Of course, they're fluid. I mean, things might change. If you get promoted a few modules in, you might shift your attention to a different goal. But the idea is to really start with those goals in mind so that you are filtering your learning through the lens of those goals. I'd be curious to hear from any of you who participated in the past, how much time you feel like you spent outside of the program. We didn't give homework assignments per se, more so things to think about, ways that you can show up behaviorally and actionably so that you can start to put some of these things into practice. But it wasn't, by design, it was not homework intensive. Would any of you say that you spent a lot of time, a little time?
Not too much time. A couple of the weeks, there was just like you had to take the pre-assessment before coming. So that way you had your results in hand for the breakout groups for that session. So, that you could have done, either right before or, a couple nights before, but there was nothing labor intensive week to week. It was just sort of, you want to take the time to reflect on what was, what's going to happen or what has happened. That's pretty much all it was.
I was going to say, oh, sorry, Kim.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say something similar. We did time management at the end, and I scored incredibly high in time management, but then learned so much from all of the women in my program. And one thing I've applied, and I applied it towards the end of the program, is just taking a half hour, an hour, and scheduling it in my calendar to reflect on everything in the program to make sure that I was prepared for the next thing. But there was never homework assignments, but there's definitely, you can include time to reflect if you want.
Thank you, Crystal. And Rachel, I'm glad you mentioned the breakout sessions too. That was another aspect of this that I hadn't shared previously, that we meet as a large group, but and last time we had about close to 50 people who had signed up, but we didn't ever achieve that in any given session just because of scheduling conflicts and things like that. I'd say probably around 25 to 30 or so would be on any given call. And then we always try to create a balance between small group breakouts and large group discussions, recognizing that some people feel more comfortable in smaller breakouts, but also recognizing that you also have the opportunity to learn and hear from more perspectives when we do so in the larger group. So it's really, it's designed to hopefully provide something for everybody.
Kim, there's a question about if there is an application process from Jazz.
Yes. Okay, great. So there is a link for you. Did you include that, Susu? I think I saw it earlier in the chat. Do you want to re-include it just in case people have joined since then?
Yeah, I put it in the chat box. It's the page. There's a button that says apply now. It's a quick application process.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing too onerous. We don't have a lot of restrictions. Really, the goal is to welcome people who are committed to the program. You get out of it what you put into it. And so, if it doesn't feel like the right time for you because things are just really busy, that's fine. But like we've talked about, it's not designed to be incredibly intensive from a homework perspective. It's more so, thinking about how you can show up a little bit differently at your next meeting, or how you can handle a certain conversation a little bit differently. So really, we're just looking for women who have an interest in investing in yourself and adopting some of the strategies that can help you to more confidently navigate your workplace. So that's the application will be on the website. And if you have any additional questions about anything, you can feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah. And there's a question about whether the program applies to someone with, 20 years of experience.
Yes. So I have done this similar program outside of Women Accelerators as well. And I've had people from everywhere from entry level up to vice president who have benefited from the program. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a fit for people who are in the C-suite or, people who are at a high executive level. But regardless of your level of industry experience, there are always aspects of ourselves that we're not investing in because we're busy, and like I said before, confidence is something that I think we could all use a little bit more of. So just thinking about these things in a different frame and having the ability to apply these tools I think, anybody could benefit from them. I've had people tell me too, oh, gosh, I wish I had learned this 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So. So I think, Nasim, when you ask about the mentors and mentees, you're referring to the mentor program. So that's actually a different program than what we're speaking about tonight. I don't know, Susu, if you want to mention a little bit about the mentoring program and where they can find more information about that.
Yeah, so we have a mentoring program every year. It started right now, and it's a 6-month program where we pair mentees with the mentors, usually like 2 mentees with 1 mentor, and they go through the program. It's a little bit different than the coaching program. The mentoring program is really working one-on-one to specific goals and things that the mentees and mentors want to work on. So we pair them up based on the goals for both sides. Yeah.
And there's another question here, Allison, you asked, when does the program start? It starts March 7th, I believe.
Mhm.
And Adelaide, you asked about a way to connect outside meetings. So what we tried to do in the last program was to group people into smaller groups and encourage you to meet outside. I don't know if any of you actually did that. I know it gets logistically complicated to try to coordinate schedules of 4 busy women outside of the group. Do any of you have any thoughts on that?
I did not, like our group did not meet, I'm not gonna lie, but I thought that the breakout groups were sufficient enough. Like I feel like even though every week it was randomized, we started seeing the same faces again. So it was sort of a nice, like Crystal and I were in the same breakout group the first week. So that was like Crystal and I had a special connection because we were in the breakout rooms week 1. So
yeah, and that is one of the benefits of the breakout session too, is you just get to know each other at a more personal level. So I would say, depending on the interests of the group, we could either look at doing some type of outside of the group matching, or you can take it upon yourself to extend your relationships that you're building within the program into the outside world as well. I think, whether you want to be accountability buddies or you just want to chat and get to know each other, there's always opportunities to do that. And we, generally speaking, get everyone's permission to put the contact information into a shared document that we can put into the OneDrive with all of the other files. And if you find yourself feeling connected to someone in the group, you can always reach out to them directly. Allison says, when she clicks on the Apply Now button, she gets an error. I wonder if it's just set to, the permissions are set to, are set more in a more restricted way.
Yeah, I'll change it now. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Susu.
Yep.
Is there a deadline to apply? Did we set a formal deadline?
Yeah, March 25th.
March 20, February 25th?
I'm February 20th, sorry. February 25th, sorry.
February 25th. If you have any concerns about that deadline though, and you want to reach out to us privately, feel free to let us know if that's a problem for you. And,
Thank you.
And the cost should be included on the website as well. I think that should be in there too. And then as Susu mentioned, if you're a lot of times people's companies will cover it. It's, a very minimal investment on the part of an organization for the kind of return that you've heard from others and that I've shared with you as well. And, so don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask your organization if they'd be willing to cover it, because oftentimes they do have budgets or carve outs for development, professional development funds, things of that nature that they don't necessarily share transparently. But if you ask, you can have access to them. One of the questions we've gotten in the past is, there were concerns about using workplace time for this kind of an effort as well. And I also think that is to the organization's advantage, that you are participating in a program like this where they're going to experience directly the benefits that you're experiencing. So I think it's a reasonable request to ask your manager if you can dedicate 1 hour a week to this program knowing that you're going to be benefiting in ways that have a ripple effect across your team. Crystal, Jennifer, Rachel, did you have any problems with getting the support around taking the time out of your workday in order to attend?
No, I mean, and it helps that it is during lunch hour. So I kind of saw it as like I'm taking my lunch hour and doing something with professional development. But I think in general, it's a pretty small time commitment, and the return on the investment is really high, like you mentioned.
Yeah, thank you. And we do record it as we mentioned. So if you ever need to miss it, you can absolutely get access to the recording. I'm hoping I'm not missing any of the questions. I have been scrolling back to try to make sure. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, I see here a Slack channel Adelaide mentioned. We can absolutely do that. Every group is different. I've had some groups who've said, let's just do a running email, or let's do a WhatsApp group, or let's do a Facebook group. So really, we can decide as a group what feels most relevant, what's going to fit most neatly into your schedules and your current habits. The ebook is really not useful, Adelaide, without the content behind it. It's more of a supplement to the discussion. I'm not sure how much you would get out of it by simply getting the workbook itself. Any other questions?
Hi, yeah. Do you have a limit on how many people could register?
Oh, that's a very good question. So last time we capped it at 50. And like I said, we never had 50 people on the line at one time. We probably only had, 35 was probably our highest attendance level. So we'll probably look to cap it around 52. If we're fortunate enough to have hundreds of people who want to join us, we'll take a look at whether it makes sense to, add another session or to adjust some of the limits. But I think it's important to keep it to a reasonable level so that you do feel the sense of safety and sense of trust, and also so that you have a chance to actually connect with one another, that it's not just this massive group of people, but that you're feeling those personal connections.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Anybody else have any questions? We've had some really great ones so far. So you're probably feeling like you have a lot of information, but no pressure at all. If you are feeling after this conversation ends that you've thought of a question you didn't think of, that you want to have a conversation with us to discuss further, anything we can do to support you in making this decision, please don't hesitate to let us know. Susu, anything else that you'd like to share?
I just want to talk about, we have financial assistance, a small number of financial assistance for those of you that need that. So it's on our website as well. So we're working on the application right now. It's still, I think it's still having a little issue, but we'll send that over, with the link and the application.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you for mentioning that too. I think we, as an organization, don't want anybody to feel like they can't take advantage of this program for financial reasons. So please feel free to take advantage of the resources and let us know how we can help you.
Right. And I think one of the things that you didn't mention is that you get a certificate from the Women Accelerate.
Yes.
Right?
For those overachievers among us, certificate is always a nice thing to have. It's like that trophy at the end.
Right.
Yes, so you will absolutely get a certificate at the end of the program as well.
Yeah.
I take my certificates very seriously. So. Anybody else think of anything that would be helpful for us to discuss this evening? I did share my LinkedIn link in the chat. So if you want to connect with me directly, or certainly if you go to the page, there is an email address there. And if you reach out, those of us on the coaching team will get access to it and will respond to you as soon as possible. So feel free to use whatever communication method works best for you.
Right.
And thanks again, everybody, for being here. Really, really appreciate it. Hope that you will participate, that you'll become part of the next cohort, or would, feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues as well if you think there are others who might be able to benefit from the program. And hope that you'll join us more broadly within the Women Accelerators community. We always have programming available. Get on our email list so that you can take advantage of the many ways that we strive to connect women, and to give you the tools and resources to succeed in the crazy world that we all live in. So thanks
Thank
again,
you.
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.